Hi, welcome back to my channel. In this book review, we're going to talk about The Beach Party by Amy Sheppard, and this is a Book Couture publication that you can get at your Kindle store, and yes, indeed, you can get it on Kindle Unlimited. Yeah, I'm telling you that at the beginning of the video instead of at the end, but hey, there you have it. Now, this book takes place in then and now. Then when a tragic event happens, and 5 years later with the aftermath. What was it that happened? Well, there was a girl named Lacey who at just finishing high school, college is right on the horizon, and there was a party. Kids all got drunk. Before you know it, Lacey is murdered. That is the then. The now is Katie and her friend Sophie. They are podcasters, and they do, I can't quite remember the name of their podcast, but what they do is they examine cold cases, murders that were never solved. Their podcast is going great. It's starting to be noticed by bigger outlets, and now they are about to do a true crime podcast of this young girl named Lacey. The thing is, Katie, half of the podcast team, was there the night Lacey died. Meanwhile, Sophie is dating Tom, who is technically their producer or their editor. He doesn't work for them, but that's what he's doing. Tom was also there the night that Lacey died. Excuse me if I mix up these names. Lacey is our victim. Katie is half of the podcast team that is going to do a true crime podcast in her hometown to investigate this unsolved murder of Lacey. Okay. Now, quite naturally, Katie is close to the case, but is she too close to the case? Furthermore, there's something intriguing about this murder and the fact that it was unsolved. Their town that they lived in was a tourist town, so there's speculation that the police just wanted this to be swept under the rug as quickly as possible to not detract the tourists that were coming to that town. So, because of that assumption that that's why the crime wasn't solved, Katie and her podcast partner, Sophie, who is also her best friend, are there to talk about this murder, especially considering how close Katie was to the situation by being there at the time. So when we go to the past, one thing we learn is from a very young age, I think around third grade or so, Lacey became Katie's nemesis, chief bully in a group of mean girls. So for years, from say third grade is about 7 or 8 years old, for years until they were like 18 years old, Lacey tormented Katie. It even started with, say, a party that at a very, very young age, 7, 8 years old, all the kids were going to a party, but Katie wasn't included. And that is kind of a window into how her experiences were with Lacey. But, like I said, it's 5 years later. And now they are going to do this podcast. People aren't happy. Who's not happy? Katie's surviving family is her sister and her parents. Then there's some members of the town. How do they feel about it? Now, the town is, by the way, called Penn Gully. And as mentioned, this crime was unsolved. And even though the police had a suspect in mind, why didn't that suspect get charged? And what happened to the suspect they had in charge? That they had in mind. Furthermore, why were there no direct witnesses, even though this was a party that included a lot of kids, including Lacey, including Tom, including the victim, including Katie, including Tom, including the victim, Lacey's boyfriend, James, and other friends that in that circle of kids that were at this party? How come none of them saw what happened? How come none of them were able to give the police enough information for them to solve this murder? Now, unbelievably, it's a debut novel. And I give kudos to the author for that, especially writing in a then and now format, keeping both timelines clear and easy to follow. So it's a good premise. And then another thing that makes it relatable is the fact that it was based on a podcast. And we know podcasts are very, very common and popular. I don't watch any true crime at all. And I don't listen to any podcasts. But I do know through the grapevine that true crime podcasts are very, very successful. So that makes this book relatable. So you got an interesting premise about a girl who was killed at a party when any one of those kids could have done it. And the fact that it's a podcast that is examining the case 5 years later. Now, the story can be kind of dry because the only emotion that I could see in this book mainly was Katie, because of the drama she experienced growing up and her trying to do this podcast on a professional basis. That's what I saw there. But when you read this book and you meet other characters in this book, Katie's parents and other classmates and Katie's ex-boyfriend, I think his name was Jude, the story stays very, very clear and easy to follow. And that's basically all I want to tell you about the beach party, but I do want to throw in something personal that affected me. When Katie was growing up, her parents got divorced, and while her parents were married, her father was a very difficult and controlling husband. So Katie was relieved that her parents got divorced. Well, at some point later, Katie's mother married Richard. I just shut the camera off because of some workers outside. The one thing that I noticed and that made me feel pretty good about this book is even though Richard wasn't Katie's natural father, the whole book he was called Rachel's father or dad. Her dad. I love that because the word step in a family relationship has always been one of those Achilles heels for me. It's something that has always gotten my goat. So I just want to say that I love that the author made Richard and Katie's mother her parents, not her mother and stepdad, but her mother and father. So I just want to throw that in because that really appealed to me, and it kind of gave this book an extra half star to bring it to 4 stars. So anyway, let me edit this together and try to edit out that noise that came through the camera. But thank you for watching. Bye-bye.